We're going to Los Angeles now. And our good longtime friend Jon Ryan joins us, Saskatchewan Roughriders punter, Super Bowl champion, 14-year NFL vet, Sheldon Williams grad. How you doing, JR?
I'm doing great. How about you?
Good. What's the remnants of the pandemic in Los Angeles where you are? Because we're seeing all these images around America where you didn't, like it's over. What's it like for you?
Yeah, it's one of those things that had to get worse before it got better, and it got really bad here. December, January, February, it was awful. I live in LA County, population of over 10,000. They estimate over 6 million people in our county had coronavirus. So it got really bad here. But once the vaccines kind of rolled out, it got good as quickly as it got bad. And things here are pretty much back to normal. I mean, today's Memorial Day. We're having a pool party this afternoon. All of our friends have been double vaccinated for at least a month or two. I don't know, June 15th, all the Southern California baseball teams are going back to 100% attendance, where, just 8 weeks ago, some of them weren't even allowing 10% in. So it's turned pretty quickly in a good way here. Well,
I'll tell you what, man, you give me so many people want us to talk football, and we will. But I know you're so proud of your wife, Sarah Kalana, who sat right in that chair and talked about Insatiable and her. That was pre-pandemic, of course. What has this meant for her stand-up career and traveling and production with her shows and stuff? What's this shift meant for her?
It's put a huge damper on all that. The last year it's been pretty quiet. Obviously comedy clubs were closed. Hollywood was basically closed. There wasn't a lot of auditions happening. She was kind of just coming off of two hit shows in Shameless and Insatiable, and they kind of killed the momentum of that. But things have gotten going a little bit more. She just performed last weekend here in LA with Chelsea Handler. They had 6 shows. So things are slowly starting to come back for her.
JR, some guy just wrote in from Winnipeg, Michael Wynn. He says, don't forget star of Bar Rescue, Jon Ryan. I didn't see that episode. What happened?
Yeah, I did a little recon work for John Taffer on Bar Rescue. My wife Sarah's been on a couple episodes, and I went along with her a few years ago, and we did a bar in Long Beach. Pretty cool experience, a lot of fun.
Well, I saw the one with Ryan Reeves and Nate Schmidt of the Golden Knights. I thought I'd seen every Bar Rescue. What's John Taffer like, JR? Is he a big man? Was he nice to you when the cameras were off? Tell me about John Taffer.
He was incredibly nice. You see this big mean guy on TV, or tries to be, and he's a big softie. I mean, he would snap in and out of character so quickly. Him and I would be sitting there, and they'd be watching what was going on in the bar on the monitors, and he'd just be telling me stories, and he'd be like, "Oh, hold on, I gotta go in there." And then you see him on the monitor, he goes in there and just starts screaming at this poor 21-year-old bartender like you've never seen before. So he was really a great guy and kind of snapped in and out of character pretty quickly.
Oh man, I figured. It's a show. It's show business. You get that now, right, with your wife. I'm like, he can't be this big of a jerk. Anyways, JR, the number one question I had for you of all was your take on the Aaron Rodgers situation, because I'm sure you're biting your lip on some things you've seen people say, maybe even us too, because I know you're super tight with him. What's your take on the A-Rod situation there in Green Bay?
At first I was surprised. I thought that he was going to be a lifetime Green Bay Packer. He still might be, but, I didn't realize that it had gotten to that point. That obviously got to the point where he wants out, which is pretty strong. But I think now, as a fan of the NFL, as a former player, you don't really realize what's going on behind the scenes a lot of the time. What we see out here as fans is a little bit different. Your first reaction is like, well, suck up and play. You're making $30 million a year. You're a god in that town, but there's obviously a lot of things that happened behind closed doors that weren't so good.
For sure. And I won't press you any more than that, other than I would assume you got Aaron's back in that maybe they took for granted what they have in Aaron Rodgers. That's kind of what he's saying, right? It seems like a Tom Brady situation to me, because I've been watching it every day on ESPN. Have I kind of read that right?
Yeah, I think for sure players always have each other's backs, but I think he just, he felt disrespected. They were taking him for granted. They weren't necessarily always giving him the tools to succeed in, not going after big time receivers or even drafting receivers in the first few rounds. He's done a lot without, having that Julio Jones or that Megatron or some massive big time receiver. I think he's made a lot of okay receivers into good receivers, but he's never had that great guy. So I think that's part of it too that bothered him.
It's amazing, John, because as you know, there's a ton of Packers fans around here. We got a ton of Packer fan viewers, and for the first few weeks of this, they didn't even want to talk about the Aaron Rodgers thing. The thought of the Packers without Aaron Rodgers was unthinkable to them, and you get it because you played there for so long. But anyways, my next one for you is, because you are in ownership, you alluded to it earlier, of the Portland Pickles minor pro baseball team. John, how has that changed your view of sports? Because you're the boss now. Has it changed the way you look at things?
I try not to. I think from the ownership side, especially in minor league sports, winning isn't number one. Kind of making a family fun experience for fans, and being able to make sure the lights turn on and you're not missing bills. You got to still be able to make money. So that's the hardest part for me, because I always want to win. I'm a competitor, and on the ownership side, it's not always necessarily the number one thing.
Well, for sure. But I mean, you realize the players are employees, but you're still a player in another league. That's why I'm just wondering when that light kind of went on. Or maybe you already knew that. Maybe you knew that years ago that you're just an employee as a player.
No, you definitely do. You're kind of just a number, and it feels crappy sometimes. So you want to try to make sure the players don't feel that way. You try to care for them and make sure they're well taken care of, because at the end of the day, pro sports is, it's a runaway train. You're either getting thrown off or jumping off, but it's not stopping for anyone. And that's just the way it is.
Yeah, no kidding. Hey, JR, I feel like I'm making you squirm there because you're kind of jumping around. I'm just trying, I like talking to owners. I do, because they have such a fascinating and unique viewpoint of the game, right? But they're not always right, which they think they are. That's the other thing about players. With owners. But anyways, maybe we'll save this the next time we have a coffee on the patio at the Wascana. You had some interesting comments with Rob Vanstone of the Leader Post last week about the CFL playing, and sure seems positive that you are going to be playing this year. That's got to feel good.
It feels really good. Yeah, I mean, they've given us a date now that we're to report on July 2nd. I'm remaining upbeat about that. I hope that's going to happen. I guess time will tell. But I feel pretty good that we're going to have a season. Shortened one. But being in Canada right now, as you guys are, you could probably tell me a little bit more what the environment's like, and if they're going to allow 500 Americans crossing the border in 4.5 weeks here. If that's something that you think is going to happen, we'll see.
Well, I'm not the guy to ask, because I've thrown my hands up and just said I'll believe it when I see it. That's where I'm at simply on this, John. I think the broad question I have for you next is that coming back and playing for your hometown team. When we first talked about that years ago, I'm like, there's no way. That's too good. Like, good things don't happen. You know what I mean? And then it did. Was it as good as you expected?
Yeah, it was great. As a kid growing up in Regina, I was a season ticket holder from 1990 to the day I was drafted in 2004. So to be able to kind of live that dream that I had as a kid was pretty cool. And the season didn't quite go the way we wanted it to. 1-2 wins away from what we wanted, but just an absolutely great experience, and had a ton of fun playing for Dickie, and just some great guys in the CFL that I just had so much fun playing with.
I asked you years ago the difference between the NFL and the CFL, and you said the only difference was the money. And I think you still probably feel that way. I mean, with that walk-off field goal from Lowther that seems like 10 decades ago in the Labor Day Classic, what you felt in that game wouldn't have been any different than an NFL game. I mean, it wasn't Super Bowl, but the emotions were wild that day.
It was one of my favorite moments of my entire football career. Being able to play in the green and white on Labor Day, and then have that, walk-off field goal by, one of my good friends and teammates, Brett Lowther. And it was just such a cool experience. And, I have that picture framed of him and I running towards Pill Country. So it's one of those things that I'll never forget. And as you said, once you're on that field, it feels no different playing in a CFL game than it does in an NFL game. All the emotions are there. Especially playing in Regina with those crazy fans. It feels no different than, stepping on Soldier Field on Sunday afternoon.
Well, it goes into Labor Day lore, man. Like that. So you made your mark with Lowther, And Brett's back. I'm so excited that you both signed. I just think and Jorgen Hughes, too. Let's not forget. You guys would be nothing without him, as you know. And he would tell us. Nelson Hackowicz says, how does JR look at the CFL situation with both hats on? As a player, you have to want to play, but as an owner, do you get not wanting to dump more money into the money pit? That's a good question. Are you seeing both sides of it?
I do see both sides. I mean, I'm obviously frustrated because I want to play football, and I have a lot of teammates that they're not spoiled millionaires. You know, they need this money. They live month to month, paycheck to paycheck, and they want to play football. Well, they also need this money. But at the same time, I do see the other side, and I know how expensive some of these hurdles are to get over. Everything from testing to even just putting up, whatever it is, 900 guys in quarantine for a week at a hotel. That stuff costs a lot of money, and a lot of money that isn't. These owners might maybe not have quite as deep pockets as they do in the NFL. So I definitely understand where they're coming from, but at the same time, I just want to play. So I understand both sides right now. Yeah,
it doesn't make it any easier. It's a complex, crappy situation. That's the kind of what it boils down to. From Random Glenn on YouTube, he says, John, is the XFL a threat or an opportunity?
An opportunity. I see it as. I don't see a merger happening. I've talked to some people in the XFL, and they kind of viewed it more as that the XFL would share some of the marketing strategies that they use, and the CFL would share more of their on-field content, game day type stuff for viewership with them. From what I heard, it's supposed to be a little bit more like a partnership. But with that being said, we've gotten almost no information from either side other than that a potential agreement, sponsorship, or agreement between the two leagues is going to happen. So I'm upbeat about it. I don't see a merger happening. I just don't think it makes any sense for either side. The CFL is, the CFL. It's, there's teams that have been around for over 100 years. So I don't see them, taking too much advice from, a 20-year-old league that's played a year and a half. So we'll see what happens, but I'm remaining upbeat about it.
Wasn't it you that said genius move by Ambrosi to just drop this little shred of meat into the tank of piranhas and walk away? The XFL
Absolutely,
thing.
no.
Yeah.
As you said, on the other side of it, as the ownership side, I see that now where I think it's great. As a player, as a fan, I think it's a little bit frustrating that he kind of just dangled that carrot in front of us and didn't really give us any information. From a marketing standpoint, I think it's amazing. I've never heard this many American people talk about the CFL before. I've not even heard this many Canadian people talk about the XFL before. So kind of just throwing that out there and letting people talk about it, letting it simmer for a few months, I thought it was, marketing-wise, it was pretty smart.
Let me just end it on this, John, because you're old enough to know, sorry to say, U.S. expansion in the 90s was awesome. I'm like, if we can have that, I'm all in. As a fan, that was tremendous. Do you think it could be something similar to that?
Potentially. I think what I disliked the most about the expansion in the 90s was the American teams not using the ratio, having all American players. It kind of just puts it a little bit different level just because there's so many American players available, with literally hundreds and hundreds of universities and colleges down here. Players, there's thousands of players coming out every year, where in Canada, we have 25, 30 schools to draw from, so just a little bit different. But, to see a Shreveport, Saskatchewan matchup or a Las Vegas, BC matchup, I used to love that a lot.
Yeah, well, my thing is the only way around it might be to have a ratio for Canadian teams and not for the American teams like it was in the 90s. I mean, it was a career. It was about 500, by the way. I had the stats sent to me how the American teams did against the Canadian teams. Like, I know you're a proponent of Canadian players. You are one. There just aren't as many. But I think, again, we'll have a long coffee session on the patio of Wascana. We got a lot to talk about. John, it's always good, man. Good to see your smiling face, and I can't wait to get you back up here and playing this summer. But thanks for this. Please say hey to Sarah for me. Glad she's back working, and good luck with everything.
Hey, thanks a lot. Looking forward to getting back to Saskatchewan.
All right, buddy. Jon Ryan joining us from Los Angeles. Current Saskatchewan Roughriders punter, Super Bowl champion, and just a hell of a nice guy.
You're watching Rod Pedersen On Demand. For more of The Rod Pedersen Show, visit rodpedersen.com or follow Rod Pedersen on social media.